In today's video, we're going to go over some tips and tricks on opening up a Microsoft project plan that you need to meet with your team and update. And so we're going to give you some tools to be able to do that effectively and efficiently, and also be able to do some analysis after you do collect those updates. So let's go ahead and jump in. Well, first things first, especially when you're meeting with the team, sharing your screen with Microsoft Project presented, you want to minimize distractions. So we're going to do a few things here where in your Microsoft Project default view, a lot of distracting things pop up. The first of which is going to be this timeline feature up at the top here. Timeline was once a good tool, but there are a lot of really good schedule visualization tools out there, like a one-pager. There are many more worth looking into. So in order to get rid of that, you want to come to the View menu, move your mouse over here to the right, uncheck Timeline. Boom, there you go. One less distraction. Now we can focus on the tasks over here on the left and the Gantt chart over here on the right. Now we're going to go through a few more options to just make navigating through project easier and less time consuming. And so in order to do that, we're going to go to the File menu, come down here to Options. While I'm in Options on this General tab, one thing I want to point out for this project plan, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change my date format to use less characters for the year. This is important because depending on how complex your project plan is, you might have a lot of data visible, a lot of columns, fields visible. So you want to use the least amount of characters as possible where possible. So that's why I would choose this option over the four character year. Some other things I want to point out are that if you have an international team, maybe you don't want them to get confused about month and then date. Maybe choose one of these options where you have the spelled out month and the numbered date. That would be another option. Also, if your team is bad at knowing what dates of the year are weekdays or actual work days, maybe consider using one of these options here where they have the weekday in the date format. Just wanted to point that out. So I'm going to pick this option here that'll use less space. We're going to move on to the Display tab, and I'm going to come down here and check the entry bar box. And for all my people that are watching this video that really use spreadsheets, Google Sheets, or Excel all the time, the entry bar is going to be one of your best friends. It's easier to edit different fields, task names, text. It also removes formatting when you're copying and pasting. The more you use Project, the more you'll appreciate having this entry bar. All right. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to come down here to the Schedule menu of our File Options menu. And I'm going to scroll down until I get to this section here. I'm going to click the drop down here for new task created. I'm going to change it to auto scheduled instead of manually scheduled. And basically, manually scheduled activities in Microsoft Project are troublesome. They ignore dependencies and constraints. They also accept non-date values. I'll show you that later on in this video. So always best to have automatically scheduled activities. And then you might notice here, you do get an option. Do you want to apply these scheduling options for this project or for all new projects? In the case of this video, I'm going to do it for this project. But if you were setting up a project template, or you just wanted to pre-configure your Microsoft project so that every time you created a new project plan, it would use these settings, then you would use all new projects. But I'm going to use this option here. Next, we're going to come down to the Save menu, and we're going to enable this auto save every 10 minutes, whatever you want. Basically, this keeps you from losing all of your hard work. The more complex your project files get, the larger they get, the more prone to crashing they get. The last thing you want to do is just have to repeat several hours of work in Microsoft Project. So this is going to be one of your best friends here. All right. One more thing we're going to do in this File Options menu is we're going to come down to the Advanced tab. And we're going to go ahead and scroll down here. Once again, in the spirit of saving real estate on the screen, limiting the amount of text characters in each field, I'm going to change the hours abbreviation to H and the days abbreviation to D. If you look over here to the left, you can see it doesn't seem like a lot, but an extra 3 characters for days does take up some space. Once again, the more complex your project plans are, the more you work in Microsoft Project, the more appealing this option becomes. Once you've set all those options, come down here and go ahead and click, boom, there we go. Now I've got my entry bar up the top here. And so you can see the entry bar. If I move my text or my task selection down here, you can see the entry bar just shows every cell that you have selected, what its values are. You can quickly update that. So like I said, you'll grow to love the entry bar. All right. One other thing I want to point out in projects is that, especially when you're meeting with your team, you're sharing your screen, you're making updates. Let's just make a quick update here. I'm going to change the duration for this task 2 in work package 1 from 20 to 21 days. And you may notice that there is a light blue color for the cells that have changed. It might not be very noticeable. Maybe you have some colorblind people on your team. And maybe let me try this task. I think this has more implications. There you go. So there are a lot of, the point I'm trying to make, there are a lot of changes that can result in a very minor change to your schedule. So I want to make this more pronounced, the light blue. I can see it, but maybe not everyone can. I really want my team to be able to see, hey, if you want to make that change, it has consequences for the rest of the schedule. So back that out. We're going to go over here to the Gantt chart format menu. And we're going to go to text styles, the button over all the way on the left. And on this items to change dropdown, we're going to click that and click on changed cells. Just to make things glaringly obvious, I'm going to change the background color to purple. I'm going to change the foreground or the text color to white. You can pick whatever colors you like. I just think this really stands out. Click now. When I make that same change to the duration for task 2 and work package 2, make it 13 days, boom, you can very obviously see that that one change had a lot of implications and affected several other activities in the schedule. So that will make things easier for you to track what you've changed and for people to see what changes when you apply the changes they told you to apply. So hopefully you find that helpful. Next, we are going to look at the fields that we have here. We're going to get rid of some and we're going to add some. To make it simpler, let's just go ahead and remove some of the fields that I don't think you'll be really needing. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove this indicators field. We're going to remove the task mode field. Just real quick on the task mode field, this does tell you whether or not a task is auto scheduled. Remember we did that in file options earlier, or manually scheduled. The little thumbtack, that's a manually scheduled activity. And this blue thing, that's an automatically scheduled activity. In order for me to illustrate that manually scheduled activities are troublesome, I am going to go ahead and highlight these because these will come into play later on in the video. But I'm going to get rid of that task mode column. If you do want to see if your tasks are manually scheduled or automatically scheduled, you could just be in the task menu and you see in the middle of my screen here, any task you highlight, it will tell you whether or not that task is auto scheduled or manually scheduled. Conversely, you can also double click on any activity. It will tell you here in schedule mode whether or not it's manually or automatically scheduled. And anytime you want to do a quick scan through your project file, you can always insert the task mode column. And last part on this, if you just want to highlight your entire project plan, do that by left clicking on any column header, and then you can just click the auto schedule button. Boom, that updates all of it for you. I'm going to undo that. Let's get rid of task mode. And then the last column we're going to get rid of is resource names. It might seem like this is the best place to, say, assign activities to people, but I'll caution you right here. If you're not an experienced Microsoft project user, you do not want to start using resource names. This taps into a whole other set of functionalities within Microsoft Project. It's called resource loaded schedules. Makes your project plan almost double as complex, if not more. So let's just hide resource names for right now. Don't worry, I have a better field that we can use. Here we go. One last thing I want to point out, don't worry. It's not like you're deleting these columns. If I were to come in and add back in resource names, all of the same data that I had in there before would still be there. So it's not like you're deleting things. One cool thing about project. All right, now that we've got some of the fields that we don't really want in there, let's go ahead and let's add in the fields that we do want, right? So the first field I would recommend adding, you can add fields or columns one of two ways. You can come over here and left click on add new column. That's the long way. Or you can just right click anywhere you want. And you can then left click on insert column. That way you can actually pick where you want the column to be inserted. So the first column that we should insert here is going to be called status indicator. You can just start typing on your keyboard in Microsoft Project and it will start narrowing down your options. I like this status indicator field. I'll explain to you a little bit more about what it does throughout the video, but it does help you basically figure out which tasks in your plan need to be scheduled or updated. All right, we've got status indicator now in there now. Another field that I don't know why is not in the standard Microsoft Project Gantt chart view is going to be percent complete. You right click, insert column. Percent complete is always at the top, probably because it's one of the, if not the most important field in all of Microsoft Project. There's no reason why you shouldn't be looking at percent complete in all of your files. Keep that in mind. All right. Next, we also want to add in the notes field. And for notes, I'm going to go ahead and I want to put that after my finish column. There we go. Notes we can use to, let's say something's delayed. I need to take a note of something because I made a big update in the schedule. Notes field is great for that. We also want to add in, we got rid of resource names. How do we know who owns which activity? Well, instead of resource names, I would highly encourage you to use the contact field. Think of it as point of contact. I've got it pre-populated for the plan that we're working with today so that we can get through this video in a timely manner. And then lastly, there are two more fields I want to add in here. I want to add in, we've got predecessors, but I'd also like to see successors. Add that in. And the last thing I want to add in here is our baseline when finish. What we're going to do is we're going to set a temporary baseline, a snapshot of all the dates in your schedule so that we can tell what we changed while we were updating things. I'll show you that more at the end of the video. All right, now that we've got all the fields that we want in the right order, you might be noticing that I'm going to have to scroll back and forth to see all my information. That's not the position you want to be in. You want all of the relevant information to be on your screen without having to scroll left and right. Just save some time so you can work with your team and let them do their jobs quicker because they won't have to meet with you as long. So in order to do that, another thing that we want to do is we want to look on the right side of the screen here and we want to resize this Gantt chart, right? Ideally, I want to be able to see all of my fields and the Gantt chart at the same time. So I want the last field to be able to fully see as baseline when finish, right? So I'm going to move my Gantt chart. I think about a quarter of your screen is the most you want your Gantt chart to take up. And another thing that we want to look at here to make sure things make sense is when you're resizing columns on the left side of your screen, you want to make sure that columns that don't require a lot of text or data or characters, let's make those small. So that would be like start, right? You can just double click like in Excel with your left click. That will automatically resize. Same thing for contacts, right? Same thing for predecessors, successors, baseline when finish. Some fields that we do want to give a little bit extra space for, I would say would be task name. It's going to be typically either your longest field or your second longest field, and then your notes field. Just make sure we have plenty of space there to type stuff in. All right. Now that we've got things resized in a way where it seems more workable, one other thing we want to do is we want to edit this Gantt chart timescale. Over on the right pane, there's where your Gantt chart is. You can see right now it's looking at weeks and days of the week. I think that's a little bit too zoomed in. Our project plan goes from December through August. So we're looking at about 8-9 months. And we want to be able to see, I would say, at least a third of that. So let's try to get a timescale view where we can see 3 months of the Gantt chart at a time. In order to do that, you want to come over here to your Gantt chart. You want to right click on timescale and then wait for this box to open. The default is you're going to have 2 tiers, middle and bottom. Let's keep that. I think that's more than enough. For the top tier, or the middle tier, I should say, we want to go ahead and update our units. Instead of weeks, let's change that to months. And then for the label, I like the label to be short and informative. So instead of saying the full text of that actual month, let's change it to an abbreviated month. And we also want to tell what year it's in. So let's pick this Jan 09. I like that one a lot for label. And then we're going to switch to our bottom tier. And instead of days, we want to make this weeks. So I'm going to change that in units. And then for the label, I also like this to be short and informative. So why don't we go with this option here, what shows the month and the day of the week. All right. After I click, now we've got a more sensible looking Gantt chart over here. We can see about 2.5, almost 3 months. I think we're in better shape there. So now that we've got things looking better, perfect timing here. Now our auto save feature is kicking in. That's what we did in the file options. That means 15 minutes have elapsed since I last saved or since I toggled that option on. I'm going to go ahead and click yes. And now I don't have to worry about redoing all the things that I just did. Next, we're going to go ahead and touch on some very critical Microsoft Project functionality, especially for PMs. This should be something that you're doing. I would recommend anytime you update your project plan, you do this the first thing you do when you open the file. Go to your project menu. We're going to set our status date. So you go to the project menu over here on the right, click on the status date. You can see there it was NA. That's not good. And you want to go ahead and pick usually today's date. Or what you could do is, especially if you're meeting with your team in the morning, maybe pick yesterday's date because they just started their day. They haven't really worked on the activities that should either start or finish today. So just keep that in mind. For today, for today's video, we're just going to use today's date. All right, so I'm going to select status date, click, and what that's going to do is it's going to give me a lot of other functionality in Microsoft Project that isn't available in a lot of other planning softwares. So one thing that it'll do is it'll help you use this status indicator column here. So if you were going through and if I'm looking at Brittany's activities here, I see that status indicator is telling me task number 3 or task 1 in work package 1 is complete. But if I were to ask Brittany, hey, how about task 2 in work package 1? It looks like that was supposed to start in December, finish in January on the 23rd. Is that completed? Brittany's great. So she'll say, of course, I'll just click. I could obviously key in here 100%, or I could do it the even longer way where I use the arrow to select 100%. Instead of doing that, I'm going to click this mark on track button, right? You can see there, it applied 100% automatically. That one was kind of a no-brainer. This next task, so work package 1, task 3, you can see that this technically, based on the fact that it was supposed to start on the 26th of January and finish on the 6th of March, this should be somewhere in progress, right? So I'll say, going back to Brittany, hey, how's this going? Are you still on track for the 6th of March? And since Brittany's great, she'll say, of course, I'm still on track. So I'm going to just click mark on track. And there you go. Microsoft Project already calculates the percent complete for that activity based on your status date, which is today, and based on the finish and start dates. It does that entire calculation for you so that Brittany doesn't have to sit there and bust out her calculator and say, well, technically I'm 47% complete with this activity. That's not a position you want to put your team in. And especially whenever you have a short meeting where you need to collect all this information, I highly recommend using that mark on track button, which is in the task menu up here. While we're in the task menu, another button that you'll find useful is going to be this link button. It's the one that looks like a chain link. You're probably already familiar with it, but basically you can link a task by selecting one task, selecting another. You click the link button. There you go. You see that project went ahead and applied those changes where now it updated our successor and predecessor fields for us. So that's great. So now that we've talked about some cool buttons that we can use, one thing I highly recommend is that you utilize your quick access toolbar. You'll notice that we've had to flip around through all these different various menus in Microsoft Project. That's something we don't want to spend time doing while we're on a call. Even for experienced project users, you may forget where a button resides in one of these 6 menus that you have up here. So a quick way to do that is you can, for any button in project, you can right click on that button and you can click add to quick access toolbar. My recommendations would be background color, format painter, and then mark on track, link, indent. Sorry, this would be outdent and this would be indent. Another cool feature about Microsoft Project, any button that you hover over that has a keyboard shortcut, you can see that here. You see for indent task, instead of me clicking that button and having it indent a task, so I'll try that with planning package 3. See that worked? Outdent also works. If you hover over, you see I don't even need to click the button. I could just highlight it. I can select any task and I can do Alt Shift left, and that moves that task for me. You could also use the hotkey for linking activities, which is going to be Alt 2 or Control F2, sorry, which is great. So I would just utilize that as you're going through things. Unfortunately, there's no hotkey for marking on track, but for indent, outdent, refer to our user guide. We have some really good suggestions for hotkeys that you should memorize, and will save you time while you're meeting with your team. Next up, we're going to just briefly talk about logical dependencies and constraints. So if you look at your predecessor and successor field, you have some logical dependencies built in here. If you refer to our user guide, we go a little bit more in depth here. But these are all going to be finish to start constraints. You'll notice that all you see is numbers here in your predecessors and successors field. The reason why finish to start is the default constraint in Microsoft Project is because it's the most likely scenario when you have logical dependencies between activities. But you can quickly change the type of dependency that you're using. Say if I wanted task 3 in work package 2 to start at the same time as task 2, I could just change the predecessor dependency and add an SS, which it indicates start to start. And you can see that in the Gantt chart here. When I make that update, now task 3 starts on the 20th of February, just like task 2. So that's a quick way to update things in your predecessor field instead of doing it the long way. Also, if you wanted to reset that dependency, you could type in a finish to start, which is what it originally was. When I do that, you'll notice that it actually goes away. The FS goes away because that is the default dependency in Microsoft Project. So I just wanted to point that out. Another dependency that you might use is to finish, but that's much less common than start to start or finish to start. And then for constraints, not going to get super into depth on that one, but I would say that if you ever have a situation where you're making links and you can't figure out why one of your tasks is not starting or finishing when you need it to, I would just insert your constraint type column. And you can see here, most of your tasks, as many as possible, should be as soon as possible. You can see here, I do have a start no earlier than constraint on this work package 2 task 1, which requires it to start on the 23rd. This is just, I've done this many times where I've driven myself crazy. I can't figure out why my schedule is not giving me the dates I need. Oftentimes, it's because I have a constraint that I wasn't aware of. So if you flip that to as soon as possible, then that removes the constraint, allows it to start based on its logical dependencies. Once again, you can refer to our user guide. We have a little bit more on constraints there. All right, so a few more things before you can meet with your team. So one more thing that we're going to do is, I'm not sure, even for experienced project users, you might not be aware of this, but you can actually rename your column headers. And for the use case that we're doing in this video, we want to be able to update our project file and we want to be able to analyze those updates. So what I would recommend if you're using these fields and you're following the advice in this video is you want to right click on your baseline 1 finish column and then go to field settings. And then for title, we're going to go ahead and change that to previous finish. I use prev because previous would be a lot of characters that we don't really need. Once again, just make sure you're resizing your Gantt chart so that you can see all of your fields. All right. Another thing that you can do, suggestion, is status indicator, long name for a simple field. I would go ahead and I would update your title for that. I like to just make it an I, like information. There you go. Now you can make that field even smaller so you can see more of your Gantt chart. So finally, why do we have this previous finish, this baseline 1 finish field in here? Well, what we're going to do is we are actually going to use this to keep track of what our schedule was before we made the updates that we're making today. In order to do that, we're actually going to set a temporary baseline, or an interim baseline, I should say. The way you do that is you come here to project menu, and then you go to set baseline, click set baseline again. Remember, this was baseline 1 finish. So instead of baseline, which is going to be your formal baseline, I'm going to click baseline 1. I want it for the entire project. You can do individual tasks. There's a lot of flexibility with this tool. So I have everything I need here. I'm going to click on, there you go. I've got previous finishes based on all the updates we've made so far in the project plan. Where that will come in handy is when I have to go ahead and make more updates to my plan. I've only updated through work package 1, right? So if we're looking at work package 2, and these are my activities, let's say if I were to go to mark on track for all of these activities, you can mark more than one activity at a time on track by using your mark on track button and selecting multiple activities. Let's say I'm on track for the first activity. And let's say for whatever reason, maybe I have vacation from the 20th to the 23rd. So I want to go ahead and I actually want to delay work package 2 task 2. I'm going to move that start date to the 24th when I'm back from vacation. You're going to get a warning here. We're not going to talk about project warnings right now, but basically I want to keep the link. There we go. All right, so I've made an update here so that now I have a new finish date for this activity. If you were to cross-reference the previous finish and finish columns, you would see that something changed here for this entire group of activities. So hopefully that kind of gives you the benefits of this previous finished column. You can imagine as we're going through and we're updating all of these activities, right? I can go ahead and use my mark on track button to update things as they should be. So Katie, she's on track with all of her work. She only had one activity, which was supposed to start yesterday, and she did. Let's say maybe she needs more time with this activity. Let's give her 10 more days. So I'll change that to 40. So you can see here, once again, your column and your previous finished column, you're going to have different dates. That's important for you to know as you've conducted this meeting that things have changed. You can tell exactly what has changed by cross-referencing those two columns. Another thing you may notice here on your screen is that you're seeing this red line here. Why is that? Also, for this summary task for work package 3, you see that in the finish date column, here, it doesn't match the work package 3 finish date. Why is that? If you remember earlier in the video, I highlighted these two tasks because they were manually scheduled. So one of the things I said about manually scheduled activities is that they ignore constraints and they ignore logical dependencies, and you can use fake dates in them. Another thing that they're troublesome with is that they don't update when a summary task is a manually scheduled activity. It does not inherit all of the properties of its subtasks, which is not a good thing. So if we come up here to our task menu, use that auto schedule button, I click that, boom. All of my problems just went away. Now this reflects the reality of the situation based on the updates I got on Katie's task. If I were to undo that change, right, you can see here, not only does it show, hey, something's off, it's kind of like a spell check in Word. You also see it in the Gantt chart, right? Something wrong is happening here. So just another reason to not use manually scheduled activities. Now that I've made that change, I can go ahead and use my quick access toolbar, get rid of that highlight, right? So another reason why you want to have maybe some font and formatting options up here in your quick access toolbar. And then lastly, one more thing I wanted to show you guys about manually scheduled activities, because this planning package 3 is still manually scheduled, is let's say I wanted to pick a new start date. So let's go ahead and zero out the duration. I want to say, all right, this planning package 3, well, it's planning package, which means it's not starting anytime soon. So I'll say planning package 3 won't start until after planning package 2. So I'm going to highlight both of those. I'll click my link button, or I could just do Control F2, which is the fast way. So now I've got a new date for that. It's still manually scheduled. If I was using logical dependencies, that's the way to do it. Since it's manually scheduled, you could also just put in literally a fake date, and it accepts it as valid input. That's not good. You do not want that to be something that is present in your file. So I would just recommend getting rid of all of the manually scheduled activities in your project plan by highlighting an entire column, clicking auto schedule. There you go. Once again, I'll go to my quick access toolbar. I can recolor that so that it makes sense. And let's make that planning package. And here's another way to link things. Instead of me having to select two tasks and click a button or a hotkey, what I could do is I could just come straight over here to the predecessor column, and I could say the row ID for planning package 2 is 15. I could just type 15 in as the predecessor for planning package 3, and there you go. I've got that done. So the last thing I wanted to show in this video is, all right, now we're able to analyze what has changed from our original schedule to our current schedule. Maybe now we're at the point where, all right, this is the schedule that we're comfortable with. Let's set a formal baseline, right? Let's baseline this entire plan. Everyone here agrees we have the right logic, we have the right dependencies, we have the right constraints, we have the right durations for everything. Instead of just having the baseline 1 set, we want to go ahead and set a baseline for the entire project, the formal baseline. In which case, we wouldn't be using the baseline 1, we'd be using baseline. Another nice thing about project is it will tell you that we've already set baseline 1 and on the date that we set it. So just a good thing to know. I really like how project does that. So let's go ahead. We're going to set a formal baseline for our entire schedule by using the baseline field. I'm going to go ahead and click. It doesn't look like anything happened. However, if we were to inspect this, if I were to add in, just type in baseline here. I'll do baseline start, baseline finish, and I will do baseline duration. So one thing I wanted to point out here is you're not just snapping. Previously, we had the previous finish, which is our baseline one finish. When you set a baseline, you're actually capturing a lot of fields. You're snapshotting your start, finish, duration. You're actually snapshotting some of your cost fields, your resources. We're not getting into in this video, but so that baseline functionality is super powerful. And this will be our formal baseline that we'll use for our schedule. Whereas our baseline one finish or our previous finish, that's something that we want to set. Every time you update the schedule, you can just use that as a way to take a snapshot of what the schedule was before you collected updates. And then after you get done collecting updates, you know what's changed. So maybe do that weekly, daily if you're doing multiple schedule update meetings a week, or maybe even monthly. If you're only updating your schedule monthly, quarterly, then that would be a different story. But so baseline one is going to be your temporary or interim baseline. And then you always have that true formal baseline in your baseline fields. All right. Thanks a lot. Check out our user guide. If you need any more information, feel free to leave some comments, questions. Thanks.